Hello and welcome to another tongue tie off by the Pace Setters AU network. I've got the blind open here, Jason. It's still daylight as we record this on Thursday night. Little timestamp.
When is when's daylight savings?
Sometime at the weekend, I think.
Yeah, right.
Jordan, our voice in the sky, might put a note up. I think it's this weekend. How are you, Jace?
No, I'm good. I'm very good. I turned midway between 40 and 50 last Saturday, as you well know.
Happy birthday for that again, Jace. As we
for those who struggle with my article and don't like need a thesaurus, halfway between 40 and 50 is 45. Just in case there's some numerical dyslexia as well going. 45.
Beautiful.
Had a great grand final day and almost got the job done. Had Callum Archie at any old odds for the Norm Smith. He did vote, but I think a very worthy winner. We should have clipped up. I sent a message through to our man from last week.
Right.
The Pogger man.
The Pog, yep.
Do you recall him saying, you and I were having I wouldn't say heated, I'd say a lukewarm debate between Carlton and I was talking about the A graders for Brisbane. And I said Lockie Neal. And then, not a man to interrupt or interject without something to say, Pogger said, Will Ashford will be.
Yes.
I have it on good information that I don't think he did back in for the Norm Smith youngest
ever. Did you say
winner.
Will Ashford as in Ashford Street, or did you say Will Ashcroft as in Marcus Ashcroft's son just then?
Well, I just said Will Ashford, obviously, didn't I?
Ashford Street.
I'll get the horses' names right. Yeah, Will Ashcroft.
Yep.
And apparently, what is it, Kai? Is that his younger brother? I reckon he's even better. Possibly. They say that stuff, though.
Mate, I read an article about Freo the other day, and I finished the article.
Ashcroft.
I remember thinking straight away, I reading that, and I haven't heard of any of those players. So I probably haven't watched as much footy as closely in recent years.
But don't you read? There's something very closely. I mean, it does happen. Look at Serena and Venus Williams. But it does. How many times have we chatted with trotting trainers over the years, and they've got a very, very nice horse going, and you're talking about that horse, and they want to tell you, yeah, but there's another one better at home coming through.
Oh yeah, my oath.
I'm not sure they always turn out to be better, but it's good to be excited.
Are they just, is that the living in hope, Chase? The dream? It's always alive, isn't it? The little flame is always burning. Doesn't matter how good your horse is out there right now, right? You've got to tell yourself the next one could be just as good, if not better.
Well, maybe, but it's almost like the number one draft picks, isn't it? It's at home when they're coming up, they've been broken in and they're doing things on the track that the other one didn't do, and they're doing things you've never seen before, or they're kicking 12 goals in the under-18s. You think, oh, this could be anything. Yeah. But it's one thing doing it at home, and it's another thing doing it at the races. There's been a couple of great examples with Emma Stewart, runners of the same generation over the years, where there's always been one that's supposed to be better.
Yeah.
And then another that actually, on the track, though, produce the goods. And that's why in sport and in racing, I tend to rate stars, superstars, champions, not on their very best performance or their potential, but what they actually get done. Because that's the hard bit, isn't it?
But when you say that, do you mean if they have one electrifying performance, they got that done, but you mean you want to see them back that up at least once, twice?
Well, okay, let's create an analogy here. Carlton, yep. Anthony Koutoufides.
We go back to Carlton, yep.
Has there ever been a better, was it 95? No, 99. Which season? 2000. One of them. There's never been a better season by one player, probably, or, right at the top of the tree. But do we rate Anthony Koutoufides with James Hird and Nathan Buckley and Michael Voss and more recently Chris Judd and Gary Ablett Jr.? We don't. One great performance is great. Two great performances, wonderful. Even, this will be controversial. We'll talk about him in the form component. Leap to fame is without doubt panels ahead of every other pacer in Australia, and he is a champion in waiting. And he will win these races, but he still needs a couple of Grand Slams. Doesn't need to be in the Blacks of Fake, even Lenny the Shark territory. We know how good he is. We know he will win those races.
But you say, I mean, you mean, okay, to beat Blackie, maybe? Sure. What's he won, though? He's won, you go through his recent record.
He's won a Hunter Cup.
Blacks are Fake Grand Circuit. He's won the Miracle Mile as I work my way down.
Not the strongest Miracle Mile, but yes, he won a Miracle Mile.
But he's won a Miracle Mile. He's won Inter Dominion as we work our way through his list here. Jason, among all of these wins, he's run second there in the Eureka, second in the Blacks of Fate last year. He won the Rising Sun, new race that wasn't around in the days of Blackie.
Right now, he's a certain to be champion.
Derby at Melton, Breeders' Crown at 3, Queensland Derby. He won the.
I'm not so big on those. I'm not
New
so
South
big
Wales
on.
Derby.
I'm not so big on including those.
But that was different though. Most horses win a Derby. You might not be so big on it, but he won famously. It was 3, wasn't it? 3.
Yeah.
I thought it was 4 for a moment, but no, it was 3 Derbies.
I'm just going to throw a name at you. I had a little debate with a good mate of mine over the text about this the other day. Mr. Feelgood.
Yeah.
Would you call him a champion?
I'd have to go back and check his resume out, Jace.
I'll give you his resume if you like.
Yeah, please do.
I reckon he
won the Hunter Cup.
I reckon he won a Little Brown Jug in America. Right?
That's something, yep.
Then an Inter Dominion, a Hunter Cup, a Victoria Cup, and 2 Queensland Pacing Championships.
Yep. So in my book, he's a champion. Yes.
Well, he's absolutely outstanding. Superstar, right? But
the superstar's a cop-out. I get why we all use it, but it's a cop-out, Jace, isn't it? It's the word we use when we're not quite sure if we should say champion. So
was Bo Todd a champion?
Was it a 3-time...
whatever the Inter Dominion was then.
I'd have to check the resume.
You want at least 2.
I must say that was probably the one period where the Interdom, in my opinion, being really honest here, just wasn't the Interdom.
But you go through horses like Smoking Up, Quinny.
Can't knock the horse, though, can you? He could only win the race that's presented to him at the time.
Correct. My point being, though, that I feel like Leap to Fame will no doubt get there. He's way better than everything else. Whether he can win on Saturday night. If he wins on Saturday night, if there's any race he's going to lose.
Yeah, that's a fair call, that. I mean, I know you've got some multis you're going to talk about soon, and I've been so tempted to just say to you, can you send them to me, Jason, beforehand? And I know you have, actually, but I haven't opened the email as yet because they came through this Arvo. But I swear you mentioned you've built some up at 30-1, and I went putting my multis in place off my very quick look at the form. I haven't done the form as yet, by the way, full disclosure. But I only got up to about 20-1, and even then it was a bit of a stretch. So I'm looking forward to this.
I was shocked. We'll talk about that soon, though. But yeah, look, Leap to Fame. We'll get to him in the form component, but he's
no certainty this weekend.
No, but I tell you what,
should win though.
He's an absolute monster. He's one of the best pacers. He's one of the best pacers I've ever seen already. But to call him a champion, there might just be a couple more that he needs to get through.
I love it. And this is the great champion debate. Everyone you talk to, J-Bon, has a different view of it. I don't go giving it away willy-nilly, that term. But I suspect from this conversation that I've got a bigger champion stable than you do.
I'm a Collingwood supporter, and Nick Dacos is one of the best players I've seen when he's on. And he's almost always on. He's not a champion.
No, not yet. But he's a bit different to Leaping Larry.
But after next year, he won't be a champion. After the year after, I don't think. Anyway.
Yeah.
I wrote an article.
I've got 2 minutes, just timestamp again, 6:32 now. I will be looking down like this in 2 minutes, just watching my Harness Charity Challenge bet Mr. Teddy go around J-Bone from the pole.
The Teddy.
At Ballarat, Mr. Teddy. It's got a terrible strike rate, but I suspect this horse is a bit better than the strike rate suggests. It was a good run last time out, and tonight gets barrier 1. One of those horses where they just, these horses, they just don't ever get barrier 1. And when they do...
There's a couple on Saturday night.
Exactly. And when they do, it's look out because it means so much, doesn't it, the barriers, and barrier 1 especially.
If you've got the speed to use it, and again, we'll talk about Kiss a little bit later on, who's got barrier 1. So
yes, I'm keen to talk about that. Absolutely. Yeah. Where were we going there, Jace? Because we've got to talk about your article, which we put up at pacesetters.au, which has drawn a bit of attention for good reason. It was a good article, Jace. Identity crisis, how Harness sold its soul for futile goal, and how rediscovering roots can lead to redemption.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a time on SEN on a Tuesday, I used to do breezing with Bonnet. And there's a funny little segue here, and it's just my philosophy in life, really. Um, I created a scenario where if you're a driver, I wouldn't mind your opinion on this. If you're a driver, like somebody who does their form and has talent and understands the form of those around them, and you have a perspective or an attitude or a plan, a strategy you'd like to employ with the horse that you're driving. And then the trainer tells you to do something different for any reason.
Yeah.
What do? And I've always promoted that if you do as you're instructed and you lose, you're going to cop the same tongue lashing as if you go somewhere else. I mean, if you win, it doesn't matter what you do. You might get a little bit of, I told you to go back and you went forward and you're a naughty boy or you're a naughty girl, but you won. And I just feel like harness racing, when I turned up as a fan at HRV, that is, as a fan of the thoroughbreds, I felt I had a unique perspective. You would too, as an early thoroughbred fan, of why I fell in love with the trots more than the thoroughbreds. Right? And there were so many unique differences. One of them actually was how many good horses went around in the country during the week. The focus on regional centres.
Yep.
Back in the day, and it's starting to come back, is the mix of top horses from different states that compete against each other, but things like standing starts, points of difference, different shaped tracks, different distance tracks, different distance racing, the fact that really good horses can be versatile. They race for longer. You got to know them better. There was a focus on the Grand Circuit back in the day. And I mean, at that point, sprint lanes were already there, but I feel like their impact has become greater and greater and greater over the journey as well. And that's been in combination with the lack of long trip racing, I believe. So now there's a certain, there's pleasantries almost sometimes in races, isn't there? Where you just go, yep, we've settled down where we're going to go. And now it's too hard to make a move. So we'll peel out. And Menangle's very bad for this because you can't peel out unless you're Blacks of Fate back in the day. Yeah. In that Inter-Dominion, you can't peel out until halfway up the straight. So I feel like a lot of the unique things about harness racing we've conceded, and we've conceded them for weird reasons. And one of them is conformity with the thoroughbreds, but we've left them with all their advantages and taken away so many of our own codes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's changed in thoroughbreds over this journey, Jace, over the same time frame, right?
I mentioned a few.
We've got rid of the standing starts.
Yeah.
Right. Well, no. So in harness racing, we've got rid of the standing starts.
Yeah.
We've got rid of, we've added sprint lanes. What's the thoroughbreds got rid of, or what have they done?
Well, everything that they might have done to change, as I wrote in the article, we followed where we shouldn't have as well, I think. So there's not as many long trip races in the thoroughbreds.
Well, no. Well, okay, sorry. I get that. And okay, I'll acknowledge you did mention about the shorter trip racing. The fact is, though, there's still plenty of opportunities, in my opinion, for long distance racing in the gallops. They didn't just stop them.
No, but I mean, you see those 2,000 metre races up in Sydney, and it's Chris Waller's got most of the, or Gay Waterhouse.
Yeah.
So we followed there anyway. We've certainly followed with age-restricted racing. There's too much money in age-restricted racing. I agree with that. It means that you're almost duty-bound if you've got one up and running, even if it's not ready, to try and make the money then.
Yeah.
And that means shorter careers. We know there are other mitigating, contributing factors like selling horses to America and yada, yada, yada. But really, the horses' careers are shorter. They don't...
But can I jump in there, Jason? Remove the distance stuff.
Yeah.
We did two things, distance aside, right? We changed our racing significantly in two ways. One, we removed standing starts for paces, which took out an entire handicapping option and a whole arm, a whole lever that you can pull to a handicap races. And we put in sprint lanes, which completely changes the way races are run. So we can say, what the thoroughbreds have done is change the percentage of distances, right?
Yeah.
But what have they done that's anything like those two I've mentioned? And it's almost nothing. They haven't really changed their, they haven't changed the barriers. They haven't changed the starts. They haven't changed the put in an extra lane, have they?
No, and critically, and this is where it obviously gets a bit controversial. Those two changes that have been mentioned and you can throw in distance as well.
Yep.
Why were they enacted those changes primarily?
Wagering.
Yes, and wagering because it's our podcast. I'm just going to say it openly. We were advised and instructed.
The data that HRV was given was to
that stands were hurting us.
Yep.
That we were getting shifted to Sky 2 and the product looked amateurish. We got sprint lanes because too many punters apparently who love the thoroughbreds were upset that so many horses got held up for a run. We reduced the distance because they said you're taking up too much time on the chief vision provider. And here's the kicker. It's the same as being instructed to do something. If you're instructed to do anything in life and you comply, there's got to be a reward. Has there been any reward for our obedience, sycophancy, and compliance? I would suggest, if anything, things have gotten worse.
Yeah, the standing start one is an interesting one. We talked about this off air before we jumped on today. Jace, we both grew up with stand. I love standing starts if they're done well, and I think towards the end, I can't remember exactly what year it was, 2016, 17, somewhere there. Towards the end of their life for paces in Victoria, we weren't doing them well. We just weren't doing them well. And they only, I think, accounted for about 8 to 10% of the overall pacing product in harness racing for that season. So there weren't enough opportunities to get the stands right, not just the horses, but the officials and the starters and everyone as an industry, right? So I think that was a big issue.
I totally concur. The way they were was nowhere near good enough, but surely things could have been implemented. And if I'm being totally conspiratorial and nefarious, sorry, old mate, I would suggest you could almost look at it as it was allowed to wither on the vine to the point where certain forces who didn't want stand starts anyway were happy to see them gone.
Most likely.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's just like when some of those basic issues and problems maybe couldn't have been fixed. Rome wasn't built in a day, but over a few years.
Yeah.
If you'd gone back a number of years, you could have fixed a stack. People have had magnificent, weird, left field, off Broadway ideas on how we can do the stands better, but nothing changed. They stayed amateurish to a degree, and I believe there's a chance that some people got what they wanted out of that.
I think so, but I think too, I mean, even now, I would love to see stand starts come back for paces. That's just putting that out there.
Yeah, me too.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it, but hey, we've got to do that strategically. It has to be done properly. What I will say though, Jace, is I know for a fact, because I've been told this, and I won't name numbers, but it is still a massive, massive gap, right? That if you end up on Sky 2 rather than Sky 1, there is still a huge gap, which I don't understand. I don't understand in this day and age, because everyone who I go out and punt with, mate, we're all jumping on our phones and we all look at the screens and we all put the app on, and that's how modern day people. I just don't quite understand why it hasn't been evened out yet.
I know. I can tell you why.
Reliance on Sky 1 and 2. I don't get that.
I didn't understand it, but I can tell you why. Because the on tilt race to race punter doesn't shift.
But
the
longest to go on your app will show you whether you're on Sky 1 or 2 that Melton Trots is next.
But if you're not committed to betting on the Melton Trots, you don't have to wait more than a couple of minutes anyway.
So
there's a race somewhere.
So you're telling me there's still a big group of punters who are just sitting there watching Sky 1 at the pub, which is always on mute at all the hotels I go to.
Or at home.
Always got on mute.
Or at home.
See, and at home, wouldn't they be betting? Surely they're not sitting there with a telephone and ringing up and naming their code.
No, they're betting on their computer and it's on the screen.
Yeah, well, okay. This is
the thing
I don't get. You got next to go coming across completely, and all you've got to do is press Sky 2 or Sky 1. So they're sitting there just watching the video, and that's what's determined. Oh, look, we've got 2 minutes Albion Park in 2 minutes. I'll go to that screen.
I'll give you one other reason, which you may have encountered yourself.
Right.
I've done this. You flip from Sky 1 to Sky 2, and then you find yourself you've left it on Sky 2, and you've missed a race that you wanted to bet on Sky 1.
It's never happened to me. No.
I think you've had a few more. I think you've had a few more bets, haven't you?
Sorry,
I don't putt like that anymore. But
back to my point though, I think that I think that there is that still genuine fear, right? And there's some evidence in it because the data says so, that if you bring back the stands and we get knocked to Sky 2, especially during tough financial times, right? Then you'd be making the wrong decision. You'd be making a mistake. Now there is an overlay there though, where if you bring back stand start racing and do it strategically and do it properly, and then you have conversations and you educate Sky and others, or you actually invest in where it's going anyway. And I know I've made the point it's going a lot slower than I thought, Jace, but there will come a time where Sky 2 doesn't matter as much anymore because everyone is watching it digitally.
But so going back to my original point, though, Codes.
Right.
We acquiesced. We got rid of standing starts. We added the sprint lanes. We made our races shorter. There's now 1,200 metre races. You would think in a partnership, which it's not. If you look at partnership in the dictionary, it's not a partnership. You would think that then they would say, well done, thank you. We're going to look out for you a little bit more now, and we're going to try and play your races on Sky 1 as often as possible.
Yeah.
Has that transpired? It's a rhetorical question because I know the answer.
Well, you know the answer, but at the same time, there's even an argument to that, Jason. That is that I can't remember the percentages, but it's something like whatever it is percentage of the airtime for X percent of the money back in bet. And harness racing does get extra airtime there. I'm with you. We're both arguing to bring back stands, but I just don't think I'm not sure that's the strongest argument for it because we get 40-something percent or whatever it is that we have airtime on Sky for about 8% of the wagering.
But that will, even that figure, just like the standing start figure back in the day, which they used to get rid of standing starts, that figure is corruptible. And I'll tell you why. If you throw half the races in a meeting on Sky 2, you can't get a clear look at it. If you featured, I'd love to go back and go where we featured on Sky Thoroughbred Central or whatever, Sky 3, where you featured a meeting.
Yeah.
You know?
Of course.
I just think you could.
That'd be the big meeting.
By just edging away and corrupting the way things are, you can make the stats look any which way you want, I reckon. So
I think there is some truth in harness racing's percentage has dipped, and it's for a multitude of reasons.
No doubt.
Obviously. Sorry, I thought we were getting a message from the voice of the Sky, but no, I'm just getting a note, Jace, that we'll start recording at 7:00. Standing starts, bringing them back though, right? I think it's worth a try. I'm not as scared, even though, I'm not as scared about being on Sky 2 because I do think the future will be not so reliant on Sky 2, right?
Yeah.
But you have to find a way that if you bring the stands back, you have to find a way to make them a better product of racing. And that is where the opportunity is, because right now, and we saw it on Kilmore Cup night, right now, okay, the country cups, for example, are not that exciting. You'd love to win it, but they're not that exciting. So my point is, if you can find a way to bring stands back, right, redo your handicapping, more discretionary handicaps, promote that fact.
Oh yeah,
promote it. Start selling the sport about harness's new way forward, discretionary handicaps, more excitement, all this sort of jazz. Then I think you give yourself a chance to actually grow turnover because it becomes not so predictable, Jace, especially on those big country cup nights where if the needle moves a little bit on those nights, it's actually a fair bit of money coming back in because you're shining a spotlight on it.
I agree totally. The one thing I'm seeing, and we've had, we won't labour on it for too long, but we've had more an update from Harness Racing Victoria about the dire economic situation that everyone's facing without a lot of context on this occasion. They got burnt last time. They've decided to do it a different way. But here's the key. I believe right now there's a lot of focus on data and KPIs and numbers and how that all works. That's all well and good. But if you're going to reinstitute long-distance racing, stands, get rid of sprint lanes, here's the key. You have to make an intuitive, definitive decision and go with it. Because you will know, as somebody who's very interested in politics, if you poll 10 people on the street about who they're voting for, in the American election coming up, are you going to get a reasonable, will you get an alpha level of certainty about who's going to win? You need not 100, not 1,000. You need 100,000 probably. So you can't dip in and out and go, we decided to get rid of the sprint lane for 3 meetings. Turnover didn't go up. In fact, it went down slightly. We're going to get rid of it. It can't work like that. I did psychology, and if you're going to do a study and you're going to try and come up with an answer to a question or at least a reasonable conclusion, you need a quantity of data to work with. And that takes leadership, balls and courage to say, we're going to, no different to the decision to get rid of sprint lanes and stands.
Yeah, it was.
You've actually got to go with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And do I think stands are about to come back? No, I don't think so. Do I think they'll come back ever in the paces? Potentially. If things can be turned around, Jace, if we can somehow get this whole ship back on track, and you start turning it around, and there's a bit more money coming back in, do you start looking at it saying, you know what, maybe there is a world where we can have better racing if we handicap these races better, and that's through standing starts? Maybe, but I reckon realistically it won't happen in the next 5 years. Your thoughts?
Oh no, well, I reckon it could because I think at some point we've seen it in various societies around the world. I think there's almost going to be a coup. If things don't turn around, there's a coup d'etat. There's going to be a revolution of some kind where basically there has to be an admission. Okay, all these things we've put in haven't worked. We've now got to do these things, and that is what probably pisses me off the most out of everything. It shouldn't be. All of these things have reached a critical mass because now it's like, well, we've got to do this. We've got to reduce prize money by this much. It didn't have to be this way. It's such a reactive way of looking at things to go, we'll only do it when we're on our knees. You got to have a crack at these things. And talking about standing starts, but even long distance racing, surely you grew up when you fell in love with harness racing, the brutality and the versatility that I spoke about.
Yeah, I did, Jace.
And remember, it wasn't that many years ago, you saw a horse like Arden Rooney, and even Leap to Fame these days, and you just go, geez, that's what I fell in love with. That 28 brutality, that's different to thoroughbred racing. That's different to every other sport.
Yeah.
That's what made us unique.
J-Bon, I don't know what half the drivers were thinking back in the day, but when they used to put a cup after any race, they'd be all making moves. There'd be horses being launched 3 wide, but half of them are gone with 600 to go, and then the next lot's gone with another 300 to go. But it was fun to watch. It was brutal, and we fell in love with that. I said here before, the Hamilton Cup, that was my local meeting, and I loved the stand start Hamilton Cup. It's a point of difference, J-Bon, and it's a point of difference. It's really sad that we've lost, and I'd love to see it come back. I will say this. I did make the point. It's a fair point. Maybe they could come back within the next few years, but maybe for this reason, because you cannot keep throwing out news that demoralizes 80%, 90% of the industry base. You can't do it. At some point, if you polled the industry and 90% came back and said, yes, we want stands, at what point do you say, well, what's the harm? What's the harm in actually bringing these back to make them work? Can 90% of people be wrong? Sure, it could happen. But these are 90% of invested people, right, in the sport telling you, bring them back. We want to make it work. Let's make it work. The drivers will make it work, Jace. They'll be ready. They'll get them up on time because if you bring them back, they'll do what they have to. And we say, all right, we want 25%, whatever the number is, of races, and the pacing calendar will be standing start to get a proper, pool of horses. Maybe that's what could.
That's the beauty of the situation, though. That's the beauty of actual consultation.
100%
right?
It is.
It's not appeasing. You know what you could do? Because let's be honest, one of the things with standing starts, not only the archaic nature of them and all the rest of them and how often it didn't quite work, but the drivers were having a lull, some of them, spinning their horses around 12 times. But if you went to the industry and said, if you want this, we'll give it to you, and we're going to rate this on how many of these races start on time. Mm-hmm. And if you can get 70, pick your percentage. If you can get this many to start on time, then we'll continue.
Yeah.
And then you've mitigating factors, all the rest.
Of course.
But you hand it over to say, is this is something you want. But right now, let's be 100% honest. What we've got is an industry-wide mental health issue almost going on because people don't know what's going on and everything's just getting worse.
It's not about
no control.
I just want to clarify though, it's not about appeasing. It's about saying that, yeah, but it is about it's not appeasing. It's about trying to inspire confidence, isn't it? That's what it is. And the only way you can inspire confidence is true consultation. That is, if 90% of the industry tell you we want this, right? Then I think it has to be, gee whiz, it has to be so bad for the industry for you to stand your ground and say, nah, not happening. Yeah. And hey, I'm not getting the data. I'm not privy to it. So I'm not saying that, it should be done, Jace. What I'm saying is it darn well should be explored, though. It absolutely should be explored. And if we can come up with a strategy and a model that works, then bring them back.
But as I've mentioned, surely that's the ideal thing. Hand responsibility for their success back to the industry.
I think you said about, 6-7 episodes ago, Jace, is there a more democratic way that harness racing could run? Is there ever a way that you could have a democracy where and in a way it's kind of set up like that, but not. And that is, there is representation from all of the bodies, right, that then go and meet and provide advice. But I'm not certain that model is getting what it was probably designed to achieve. No. Okay. Because I'm not sure, I don't want this to sound awful, but I'm not sure over history that the representatives have filtered the information back as much as they would have liked, or the industry would have liked. I'm not sure that they've necessarily pushed the whole of wide industry viewers, maybe some of their own barrows along the way. And this is going well back through history, right?
Yes, I concur.
But I think if you had a situation now where you said, all right, you got a passionate person, right? They put their hand up. There's 8 seats that go in there, and you've still got HRV, of course, who have the ultimate say, but you've got 8 seats in there that sit in on a council, and they make decisions with HRV. That's not. There's something about that I kind of like.
I'm going even further down this path that I hadn't thought about this, but with the standing starts,
right?
If you want it, here's the parameters: sprint lanes. Not over a month, not over 2 months. You do it for a year.
Yeah.
And you say, we want to see X amount of less handing up or taking a sit in transit. We want races to be this much faster. Right? And it will play itself out. And then at least, if it doesn't work, you can go back to the industry and say, well, you told us that these changes would happen, or this revolution would happen if we did this, and it hasn't. So we're going back.
And if that's done with a proper, legitimate, you know what? You raised it. It was worth raising. We all agreed, let's do it then based on the numbers. It didn't work, guys. Well done, though, for trying. And my point is, it's not about, we told you so. It's genuine collaboration, isn't it? It's genuine collaboration, actually working together.
But critically, all the measurements have to be done properly. Because right now, if turnover is already going down, you have to measure where that graph is going. You can't say, well, we did it and turnover went down further. You've got to say, well, has it slightly arrested?
Yeah. Is that the reason? Yeah. Did it speed it up? Yeah. Or were there other factors? Of course, there's a lot more to it. Sprint lanes, I'm not as I think bringing back standing starts for paces, I think that would, the reason I say that, Jace, is because you can actually handicap races better. And I would like you to comment on what you thought of the Kilmore Cup and even the Kilmore Trotters Cup, a fantastic win, a brilliant win by Andy's very, very nice trotter. But you and I agreed, and so did Pog, that we would have had it off 40 or 50 had it had been a discretionary race, but it wasn't, and it still might have won.
And it was it began brilliantly, as a couple of 30 did, but
the pacing race didn't work out because once those horses with the blistering gate speed were able to get to the front and take up their positions, they had to be respected, and it was game over, really, wasn't it?
Well, put it this way: we've discussed your running before. You've done a half marathon, but never a marathon, haven't you?
Yep.
And if you were right now for the first time to run a marathon, you'd be very conservative about your early speed, wouldn't you? Because you wouldn't know in yourself whether you were capable of actually running it out.
Well, that's the amazing thing is, though, I would keep running, but I'd have to slow down significantly, but I would finish the race. And that's your point. I would find a way to finish it by running extremely slow kilometres.
And what they're doing is saying, we've never run in these races. These horses do not compete in long trip races. So I can't be the aggressor. I can't be the one to go and lay down the law because I don't know what's going to happen. If this horse drops out at the 800, who's a very good horse because it's in the Kilmore Cup.
Yes.
What am I going to be left with potentially? So that's why, again, we've mentioned it ad infinitum, ad nauseum. You got to have a lot of them. Even we'll talk about the 2,760 metre trip for the Derby
We will.
and the Oaks. And I agree with that, but you've got to have lead-up races over a longer trip, surely.
What's your take on the sprint lanes, though, Jace?
Well, the sprint lane, I'm not convinced. I've sort of grown up punting on the trots with sprint lanes. And my
express post lane.
My style of punting probably favours the sprint lanes.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, because I want pegs, and be able to play my money races and trifectas. But here's the key. I'm certain if you took sprint lanes away the first 3 months, 2 or 3 months, nothing would change. But then maybe it would. Maybe if you didn't fear that horse who's behind the leader and you could say, I'm going to try and put the leader to bed. I'm worried about the one behind the leader, but I know it can't get out now. You might actually see it. I'm not convinced you would, but surely having a crack at it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And to see, and I reckon horses would be trained differently. Some of the horses who haven't got a 26 quarter in them would be trained to sustain that speed longer. Right now, if you've got a good horse sitting there behind the leader or 3 poles, you're not going to say, hey, I'd like to sacrifice myself. I'm a masochist. I'm just going to drill and then I'm going to let everyone fly over the top of me. But if you thought, I'll tell you what, I might be able to crush, pinch and march, and these horses are going to be held up.
Yeah. Karen Manning deserves the credit she got for the Eureka drive. 100% she deserves it. It was a very good drive. But she was also on the horse that could do it. And that is true. I love Kez, and she made the right call. And that horse earned Jace because she put it where it needed to be, right? But I don't blame necessarily anyone else for not making a move. That's racing as well, because for the reasons you just said, if you've got it weighed up in your mind that I literally will drop out if I'm the only one who does it, and then no one does it, well, one person does it, and they're not on the right horse because Kez was on the right horse, then you're just doing it for no reason. If you sit back, I guess you're just hoping that you'll be able to dash home better than several others and finish in the minor end of the money, but it makes it a no contest from a win point of view, doesn't it?
But here's
that's harness racing too in modern day.
Again, sprint lanes are like you. I'm somewhat less passionate about, but I'll say this.
Yep.
This is the faulty reasoning. The false economy, right? They say we instituted sprint lanes because horses were getting held up. But now, I've been at the pub, people blow up way more now about, all right, I found this one that's got gate speed. It goes to the front, then it takes a sit, and maybe the one it takes a sit on takes a sit. If they, over a long period of time, I've got little doubt that there'd be more horses with gate speed finding the front and saying, I'm not taking a sit.
I think so, yeah. I mean,
because that little guarantee of running a place here is gone.
I never went to the showgrounds, but the lead was pretty important, Jace, back in those days. And if you got it,
you didn't give it up.
Held on to it.
Yeah,
it's a great discussion. I think we'll have more of it. It's been a good start to the show, actually, Jace, because we didn't do a lot of planning on this, but it's possibly been one of the more natural discussions. I think that we've had, and it's a tricky area because the other thing I'd say is people who have grown up with the sport of our vintage and older, Jace, there's a certain romanticism about what it used to be and wanting to live in the past a little bit too, isn't there? Because it was a great time. And that's the same in anything in life. You romanticize about great times in your life.
Yeah. The Sellers days, the Halcyon days.
But I'm acknowledging that, but I'm certain, especially on stand starts for paces, that that's not the driving force behind wanting to bring them back. And I keep saying, the country cups are not what they used to be. And we need to, it'd be awesome if they were, and we could say, what, doesn't matter. The stand starts went, but the races are brilliant and they're awesome and they're great contests. if Leap to Fame, Jace, rocked up at a, Cranbourne Cup, say, right, and they only got 6 or 7 runners and blew them away.
Yeah.
You say, how awesome that we get to see that horse.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you say, what a rubbish race. What a rubbish contest that was.
But the beauty of the standing starts, one of the things I mentioned was, and most of them predate our time, apart from the Night Pistols and such we spoke about off 100 metres.
Yep.
Those not superhuman, but super equine efforts, above and beyond what you'd ever see in thoroughbred racing, were possible. And now they're not. And the other thing is, so many of the races are so uniform these days that if you don't have a specific type of horse, in fact, these days, if you don't have some speed, you're in a lot of trouble, aren't you? You might be able to go for 3 days, but if you haven't got some speed, you're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, you got
whereas you might not sack the one that hasn't got much speed, but is very, very good from the strands.
Yeah.
You might not sack the one that's got stamina but not a lot of speed. He can't do the 26 quarter, but he can keep going in 29s. You might not sack it. So it's that versatility in that it's an opportunity creation.
Yeah, I agree.
Theorem, really, isn't it?
It is. It's a good point. Bit of feedback, Jace, on your article. Yep. David Moran, couldn't agree more, Jace. For years, we've pushed people away from our industry or forced them to walk away rather than promote it and keep it where it is. Keep where there is still country clubs and tracks in New South Wales that thrive. And he goes on, talks about, bugger all participant earnings and prize money. I think that's something that we can all relate to. Yep. It's a very, very challenging financial time for the industry. And we've said these superstars, they are superstars, J-Bon, just for still doing this. Horse feed continues to go up, petrol continues to go up, et cetera, et cetera. And Sal Moran says, and now everybody suffers, and Jim's mowing services might be the only winners out of this one. Obviously suggesting that we may lose some participants. Danny Boucher responds, J-Bon, that totally agree. Most of us are hardworking bogans, but they try and make us professional athletes and fine and suspend us accordingly. Let us be what we are and embrace the difference. That's from Danny.
Yep. Love it.
There was some feedback on Twitter. I think Ali Hurley largely agreed with you, but she didn't like your comment about the thoroughbreds being more, what was the word you used?
Glamour. I would have had 1,000 on. I love Ellie, but I would have had 1,000 on Ellie. Not like that. But what I was trying to prove, and there was some people. There was one respondent sort of saying, "Oh, you're not acknowledging that scandalous nature of the industry." I mean, I could go on for days about that. It just isn't accurate. But I was trying to be, even writing about that. We're trying to be honest and authentic, aren't we? And the truth is, out there in the world, people do see the thoroughbreds as a sport of kings. And almost Danny Boucher says it best. There is a point of difference about the down-to-earth, salt-of-the-earth, all of it. It once, as I wrote in the article, aligned with the Australian national identity, the brutality, the versatility, the longevity. All of these things people loved about harness racing. Yes. And now we don't have them in the same way, and it has not benefited us, in my opinion.
A fella called Go You Good Thing, or I don't know whether it's a fella or a woman, Go You Good Thing. Hard to argue, Jace, but again, just bamboozled by the beautiful use of words I never knew existed. And in a very similar vein, or a somewhat similar vein, David James said, need a thesaurus to understand this, Jace. Terrible piece. So he just wasn't happy with your use of
there's always going to be detractors. I actually tried to tone it down a little bit, but he spelled pompous, drivel, and thesaurus all correctly. So
true. Well, I
think he might be having a bit of a lull to himself there, DJ.
To be fair, that was after we provided him the thesaurus, so he might have used that to find the words pompous and drivel. No, I'm being cheeky. We appreciate all the feedback, but David didn't so much appreciate your use of words, Jace. So
God bless him.
Take that on board.
It's one of God's children.
But thanks for engaging with us, and hopefully thanks for listening. As Mr. Teddy, quick update, got beaten 3 pegs. I could have used a sprint lane at Ballarat. It was running on well at the end, ran 4th. So no luck there, J-Bon. And you mentioned Kuda Feedies earlier. Just a very quick one. My cousin, Mum would be watching. She never misses the show, so shout out to Mum. My cousin, Brendan Parker, used to be named emergency alongside Kuda Feedies back in the day, and they selected Brendan Parker a couple of times before Cooter, kicked a couple of goals for the Blues, ended up going into country footy and kicking over 100 goals and played in the SANFL, very successful. I asked David Parker all these years later, at Sportsman's Night, about 10 years after that, I said, do you remember the name Brendan Parker? And he said, I remember Brendan, yeah. I always thought Brendan had a knee injury or something that ended his career, but Parko's response to me, and if Brendan gets a hold of this, is watching, good stuff. But Parko said at the Hamilton Sportsman's Night, he grinned and he said, yeah, he had lots of ability, very good football, but didn't know how to be a professional footballer down in Melbourne. So anyway, a country footy legend was him.
Well done, Parko.
Cooter went on to be what Cooter was, which was
Cooter Mitophetes.
Cooter Mitophetes. J-Bomb, we've talked about Kilmore. Do you want to give the 3-2-1 votes and a black booker?
Yes, I'm going to go for my black booker. I've got a funny feeling I might hear an echo.
Hello.
Echo in the room. Black booker, better isolate.
Better isolate for your black booker, yep.
Yes, and my 3-2-1 goes a little something like this. In fact, it goes exactly like this.
I see.
3 votes for Charlie Haddad.
Nice.
It's the same Charlie Haddad, isn't it? He was one of my first people I interviewed for the harness racer as well.
I presume it's the same.
Bells and whistles.
Yeah. Probably, yep.
2 votes for Kylie Sugars.
Right.
And one of your old mates, Ikigai. Steered this time by her sibling, Gregory Ross. And 1 vote for Vince Vallalonga. So I'm sticking with the general theme here.
Okay, now, this is quite funny because we did not collaborate on this.
We did not confer.
My black booker is better isolate.
Yes, echo.
3 votes, Charlie Attard.
Echo.
2 votes, Kylie Sugars.
Echo.
1 vote, the Vallalonga. So they've all got double there. I must say, I tell you what, Charlie Attard, Leyden, for the whole life of this podcast, J-Bond, for the last sort of 5 months, Leyden has been flying.
Sponsored by Leyden. It's partly sponsored by Leyden, yeah.
And similar story with Kylie Sugars and Ikigai. So, yeah, they've had these horses going really well for a while. And I just love seeing Vince Vallalonga get a winner. He's just he's a character. He's an industry character, Jace.
He hasn't been well. He's got...
No, I did hear that.
It's like hemochromatosis or something, or a similar condition. He's lived with it for a very long time and continues to train. So you talk about people... that masochistic will to stay in the game. Well, he's done it through very adverse circumstances, and he's another man who I interviewed for the harness racer and a good man, a mate.
Major Crocker, what a horse, what a run that was. What a run. He's got about 6 in work at the moment. I remember him saying to Paul Campbell the other day, great job Paul does telling those industry stories behind the scenes, Jace.
I'll have to try and get myself on. I know you got on. Maybe I'll have to tap Paul and invite myself on.
100%. In an era when we need to be telling stories more than ever. Dick Lee passed too, for some sad news. He passed yesterday, I believe. I.R. Lee. We all would have grown up with Dick Lee in the form guide, Jace. More of
the past, and it brings back wonderful memories. I was fortunate enough to be able to interview Dick Lee when he won his Gordon Rothko medal. It was a wonderful interview. He was so funny and engaging that night, as I'm sure he was right throughout his lifetime for everyone that knew him, Dick Lee. And, great guy. And he'd be very, very pleased to see how far the trotting gate has. I think he wanted every race to be a square gating event, but he'd love to see how far trotting has come. And it's just a shame he's not here to see where it'll be in 10 years, because you've got a funny feeling, haven't you, that if harness racing is to survive and thrive going forward, you get a strong feeling that square gating is going to play a very, very, very significant role.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in our form section because there's some superstars coming through in that space. And, just such a friendly bloke, Dick, and an absolute legend of the game, Rothko medalist. And I remember when he won that Rothko medal too, J-Bon, and you interviewed him, he actually said something that night. He had a whack at HRV, and it was around standing starts, actually. So
right.
I reckon he said it up on stage. I could be wrong, but I have a memory.
Time.
I know he said something, that's for sure. He was, happy to speak his mind, and good on him. Absolute gun, and he'll be missed. I reckon that wraps up the first segment, J-Bon. Let's have a look at the form for Melton on Saturday night.
Sounds good.